Hello, YouTube. So I'm back here, and I'm here with Jake Roy, 90s B-Ball Cards, that has the most passionate content on the internet,
You
passionate
got it.
collector content. Is that the tagline?
That you got it. Most passionate content for card collectors on YouTube and possibly the whole entire internet.
Perfect. So that makes this the most passionate, not interview because I don't do interviews. I do collector conversations. So I want to have
There
a
we go.
collector conversation with you. So I'm contractually obligated, Jake, to have a conversation about the National. So in 30 seconds or less, why should I care? Because I'm not going.
It's a great time to hang out with people.
Amazing. That's the national content we all needed. Oh, and wear comfortable shoes. Really,
Yes, very comfortable. I suggest the Adidas Ultra Boost. That's my personal favorite.
I like those. I'm a big fan. Unfortunately, now that I turned 40, I'm particularly cognizant of this, so I think it's very important. The comfortable shoe. I believe in the comfortable shoe thing at all times, not
Yes,
just the national. I'm a big comfortable shoes guy right now, big time.
I'm right there with you. You know, some of the basketball shoes that I love, they sit in the shelf and collect dust more than they used to. So
That's fair. Actually, let me ask a quick question, since you are a basketball guy. I
yes,
got into the Jordans thing a little later, but I am familiar. I do have a little familiarity, especially in the pandemic. I had a little downtime. I love listening to sneakerhead podcasts. I do enjoy it.
yes.
So I still have some interest in it. All right, favorite Jordan.
Favorite pair of Jordans would be the 11 Concords. And I think no,
Nice.
I have. I could go grab a pair. They're right next door to me. But
Gotcha. Well,
those are my favorite Jordans.
I don't have the 11. I don't have the 11s, but I have like the 11 Comfort
Yep,
low
yep,
top.
yep.
So
And
they
so
got they got the comfort
if we're
versions now.
talking non-Jordans, right behind them, I have these right here, the foam posits.
Ah,
These were pennies.
nice.
Um, these are very comfortable, double stacked. Zoom Air. It was the first time I could go off about. I'm not only a card nerd, I'm also a little bit of a sneaker nerd. Not as much as cards, but have fun there.
I just thought I would touch on it since we brought up the comfortable shoes thing. I thought that would be an appropriate thing. I gave Jake a warning is that I got angles. I can play
Oh
angles
yeah.
and all kinds of different stuff. Plus, like I said, I did have a lot of fun with it. I do like to listen to them, even if I'm not going to go deep into collecting them. I'm still interested when
Mm-hmm.
people are passionate about some of these things because that can still be very entertaining content, even if that's not the thing you collect.
100%.
Big fan about that. Okay, so let me touch on a couple of things here. So what I'm going to do, we talked about a couple of different areas and topics that we can talk about, but let's touch on this one briefly. Since I mentioned this one last, let's start with this one. Grading side of things. Our good friends at Beckett.
Mm.
Now, obviously, they've got a long-standing history in the hobby. You know, Dr. Beckett himself obviously
Yep.
built the media empire first, and then offshoot of that in the late '90s. I think I want to say it was about '99-ish, give or take. BGS.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, they became a player very early on because they had the brand recognition. They had the street cred right off the bat with everything going on. People love the subgrades and all that. Never been a big fan of the holder. Not my deal. However, I respected what they did and what they were doing. But in the basketball side of things, there's some big Grail cards sitting in Beckett holders. So they
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of cred in the basketball side of things, especially. Where are we kind of sitting on Beckett these days?
Um, I can't speak for the royal we, but
Sure.
for me,
Mm-hmm.
my feelings on Beckett have been shifting slowly, ever so
Mm-hmm.
slowly. I've been a big fan of Beckett, since the '90s. For all the reasons that you stated. I like the aesthetics of the slab. I
Sure.
totally understand when people say they're too clunky, they're too thick. I totally get it. Here I've got a nice little Favre for you.
Oh, with the
You know,
correct pronunciation. Wow. Chef's kiss. Love it. I
but
appreciate
like
it.
I get it. Like these are substantial, and this is not a thick card.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that criticism. I like the look of them. I've always said I like them for 8.5s and above because I
Mm-hmm.
hated those paper flips. They changed
Yeah,
that.
I think universally everybody hated the paper flips. I
Yeah,
think everybody did right from the
yeah.
get go.
I don't. That's one of those things. I'm sure if they could go back in a time machine and never have those, they would have. But um, they keep tinkering around the edges with things that I don't think are really core problems that they need to address. And I think that there are some things that collectors have been screaming for years. And when we see, changes, for example, when we see all of a sudden they roll out this brand new logo, this nice B with a star, people are like, cool, but you still won't pick up my call when I am asking about a status of my order. You still,
Mhm.
it takes you 10 months to get through, all these different things. We could go through a litany of issues. So
And
not
in the
addressing
pandemic, they
those.
literally went dark. In the
Right.
pandemic, no, we sent out an APB. We couldn't hear from anybody in Beckett.
Exactly.
It's like they vanished.
Right. And like, I know from a business standpoint, right, like all of the issues, you could have the whole list, you can't address all of them at once, but if you just start prioritizing them and chipping away at them, and communicate that, I think that people would feel a sense of security that, hey, we're being heard and it's being addressed. But like, saying, okay, that's cool, but now we're going to work on VHS grading, it's just like, hey, what about me? So like, I still love their holders. I love getting a PC card in a Beckett slab. But I've sent in, I think, 2 submissions to Beckett in my lifetime as a collector. And I don't know when the next time is that I'm going to send cards in. I love buying them already in their holders, but sending cards into Beckett right now is just one of those things that I'm just kind of like, I don't know how I feel. So that's kind of where I'm at. I love having their cards in my PC, but I'm not going through the trouble and the time and all the hassles, and hope that they make changes that are positive, right? Because like, I don't want to get a submission back and have a change that came in midway through, after I sent my cards in, that if I knew that submission was going to have that change reflected in it, and it's something I don't want. I don't. The wait time is so long that I think that that's a possibility. So
Fair. I'll quickly touch on one or two more things, and then I'll shift over to a different one. But I did want to touch on this one a little bit, since like I said, the basketball side has a strong background with certain cards, big cards,
right.
that sell for big money. So, and they're still in those holders. One thought that I had, so let me ask this question: if you had to prioritize, you get to choose. What's the priority? What to you is like, okay, we got a whole bunch of things we need to fix. What does Jake want? Like, can you just do this one first? Can you start here with this piece?
Yeah. So the one thing that I think is such low hanging fruit, it's low hanging fruit in one sense, but it's not easy work, is getting some sort of a consistent marketing and communication persona. My feeling is a Beckett 10 is a superior card in terms of condition to any other graded card on the market. But the market as a whole doesn't recognize that, right? Don't get me wrong. If you see a BGS 10 black label 86 Fleer Jordan go up for sale and a PSA 10, the Beckett is going to go for more. But if you pull the average collector that's been in for the last, 1 to 5 years, those folks really couldn't care less. They want the PSA 10. So I think that's a problem, and I think that's something that Beckett needs to address. And their marketing communication, I think overall, is really lackluster. And that's just one really core example. So that's what I would do, and I know that that's a really big shift. That's a strategy shift. That's possibly a staffing shift. It's not an easy change to make, but I think that would be my top priority if I were sitting in that seat. Which, trust me, I don't want to be in the CEO seat of that company, or any company for that matter.
Oh, that's fair. I think it's a good selection. I honestly think I would prioritize the counterfeit thing. That counterfeit issue was a big story when it came out. They acknowledged it. It was a very strange rollout where I remember when Jeremy from Beckett was explaining it with Eric Norton at the time.
Yeah.
They had like the little interview thing. The in-house. The problem is it was a state-sponsored television interview. So
Right.
the only time he would talk about it was like in the safe space of the Beckett HQ, which in and of itself was again questionable. But I can live with it if what you're communicating to me is a clear vision, a clear plan. This is what we're going to do. But that was forever ago now.
Yep.
And as far as we know, nothing has been fixed in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And that would give me pause of major cards in that holder, because in theory, it could be a counterfeit holder.
Yep.
And my favorite takeaway, Jake, my favorite one from that, because I remember making fun of it, and this is going to be a recurring theme. I love making fun of certain things like this. Jeremy acknowledged that Eric was trying to help out, and he was trying to say, like, you can look at the font with the Beckett B and everything. And Jeremy was saying, actually, we have inconsistencies with that with the supplier, and it isn't always the same. And I'm like, you're a professional company.
Right.
That is not what you should be acknowledged. That's actually really bad, Jeremy. That's really bad. That's not good.
Well, I've even noticed with some of my cards, like when I look at this one in the 9, you can't see it on camera, but like there are differences in slight differences in the nines that I have. And some of them I've looked at them and I'm just like, and like I go through and I check the serial number and I'm like, okay, we're good. But if I'm just looking at it from a showcase in a show, and if I can't get internet, it has given me pause in the past. And those type of inconsistencies are a bit baffling to me as a collector.
Absolutely. And that's why I say, like, to me, I agree that yours makes a lot of sense in that regard. But I'm like, from even restoring confidence, like, I feel like I should be able to look at your slab and within reason feel comfortable that something has been, because the slabs haven't really been fundamentally changed
No.
since the early days. So like, we haven't improved anything.
And like, you look at the back of the flip, there's a lot of real estate there that's really not being used. Put a QR code there, something you can quickly scan, because the barcodes that they at one point added, who's that helping? Who cares? What am I going to do with the barcode as a collector, right? And having that serial number there is cool, but hand jamming all those into their databases is no easy feat. Their database is not the easiest to work with, so there's stuff like that. I feel like where PSA has their little, whatever you call it, the way that they have the ink with the PSA logo on the front.
They call it the lighthouse, the little lighthouse thing.
Yeah. Like, you could do something like that with the Beckett B, some sort of like a reflective thing that, like, if you were to try to pry it apart, like, almost, I think there's like some of those security stickers that people ship cards with, that it's like if you pull the two pieces, some of it comes off and it never goes back the same way. Like, there's stuff like that you could do that, like you said, would help restore some of that confidence that people used to have in their slabs. So
it's a starting point. That's why I say, like, I feel like it's almost, at this point, if I was at that company, it's like baby steps, guys. You're not going to reinvent the wheel here now. Maybe just start with something small. Be like, hey, look, we heard your feedback. We're going to do it to your point. We're going to make some modifications to the label to make it just a little tougher to counterfeit. Yes, they'll still figure it out, but at least we're trying. At least we're trying something.
Yeah, and we're hearing you.
Yep, that goes a long way. So you covered that. Perfect. All right. So let me touch on a little bit. The market thing actually plays well because obviously we came off the big boom and everything. Now, this is interesting to me because there's a multi-pronged kind of question here. So I want to have a little fun with it. I thought about giving you a 12-minute preamble and then letting you answer the question, but I'll refrain. I'll give you the short version. We had the big boom. I'm not picking on anybody. We had the big boom. And then obviously prices escalated. Some of the stuff has come back quite a bit, obviously. And, that's a big topic of discussion. But not everything is going to come back to its previous level for different reasons. And we can touch on some of those, but there's a lot of reasons for it. But here's the angle that I want to take on this. There's two parts. One is, on the one hand, the rising prices made certain cards available because it incentivized some folks to put some stuff in the market that they would otherwise not have done. I've been the beneficiary of this during this run-up. I've talked about this at length. They go, well, on the upside, for somebody like me, I was chasing after, I had my like checklist of like top cards I was chasing, and during the whole time I was like, scratch. It cost me money, but I'm like, scratch. That top 10 got beaten down pretty quickly because a lot of stuff suddenly appeared. Really tough stuff. But here's the thing, and this is also kind of another consequence of this. And the basketball side really felt this, and this is why I wanted to kind of ask you this. A lot of times when we're talking about your Penny Hardaway cards and some of the other basketball cards that you've got, the escalating prices, and this is kind of what I was thinking about the other day, it almost kind of inoculated us to seeing these big stickers, and it took away some of our sticker shock. It actually broke the mentality of a lot of people, because you'll see the little kids with the Pelican cases and $10,000 worth of cards, and I'm sitting there like, Jake, I have spent $1,000 USD on a card maybe twice. I have some cards that have gotten that, but they got there because they rose in price from when I actually bought them. I'm not in the market. And this is where I think we've broken the thing, because we'll talk about record prices. We'll talk about 5-figure cards, 6-figure, 7-figure, even 8-figure cards. The average rank and file person, pandemic or not, boom or not, is probably still $100 card purchase is probably still a decision for most people.
Yep.
In a way, didn't we kind of break the system? Because now it's like, yeah, okay, you want to be a collector. It's like, oh, it's like a $500, $1,000 card. This is after it was at $10,000 at the boom. It went down 90%. That's still $1,000.
Yep.
I'm still not in the market for it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, and I hear a lot of people that maybe they're getting back into it, or they got back into it in the last 2 or 3 years, and they're trying to kind of right size their collecting. And some people are like, I don't know if I have enough money to collect. My brother is a prime example. He won't have any issues with me sharing this, but he got out of collecting. He was a Jordan collector his entire collecting life, right? He's been collecting as long as I have. And he sold a bunch of his cards, got into a situation where he needed to liquidate some stuff and decided, it's time to let this stuff go. And he sold that stuff just before the Last Dance documentary. He just started getting back into like really collecting cards in the last month. And he's collecting Hakeem Olajuwon now because Jordan cards are still very pricey. And he's just like, I'm just not there. Like mentally, it's very difficult for me to get there to buy some of those same cards that I used to have. And some of them are back to the same level that he sold them at, but he bought them so early on, just like you were saying, like they had gone up in value. He didn't have that kind of money into them. So, to be able to liquidate them and use it for stuff that he needed, it was kind of an easy decision for him, but he's like, I'm not buying in at those prices, even though they've dropped a ton. So it's tough, but I like you, like spending more than $100 or $200 on a card is not something I do lightly. And I definitely don't do it often. But I think that if you go onto YouTube and you watch a lot of the content, you would assume everybody that collects cards is dropping 1,000, 5,000, every time they turn their head. And I think that there is a higher ratio of that type of content out there that is not representative of the average collector. Not that there's anything wrong with people sharing that type of stuff, if that's what they want to do. But I think that, people would be doing themselves a disservice to see all that and think that that's the average experience of a collector.
Absolutely. Part of the reason I was asking that question is that I think, and this is something I deal with regularly on the live stream, where I kind of have to, I can talk about both angles of this, because I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't care what other people spend their money on. You want to spend $100,000 on the card, have at it. There's no judgment from me on this. By all means, it's your money. Do with it as you will, by all means. But my concern is, and that's why I use the basketball example, because obviously we saw such dramatic increases in some of this. The problem is some of this stuff's just not going to come back. Like, you're not going to get it. Yes, it'll be down from its peak. Like from the apex, absolutely. It'll be way, way down. But it'll still be too high for the average rank and file collector in a lot of instances. And the problem is this. Even if I say to myself, and for most of my PC players, this is not a concern. I talk about my Mike Modano PC. That's my big one that I've been doing since the mid-90s. I started back then. I've got most of the stuff I ever wanted. I've got most of the Grail cards. But at the same time, if I didn't have them already, I would not pay the going rate for them. I simply wouldn't, because at a certain point, and with Modano, this is not an issue. He doesn't have many thousands of dollar cards. It's not a thing. But some of them are at a point where I'm like, this is what I would have paid for a Grail level card, but this is like a nice 90s parallel card, which is now popularized because people got into the 90s stuff. I'll use an example that carries over to basketball. The grand finale. So we got the SPX grand finale, out of 50 and all that good stuff. And I think baseball has it, I think basketball has it, and hockey has it as well. Print run on those is 50. Obviously a tough card, great card. It's on that list for sure. One it was recently on eBay a couple of weeks ago. It ended up selling, I think, for $660. I had that save surge from Modano for years, no pings. And it pinged. And I was sitting there like, and here's my problem. How do I price this when I have no earthly idea? It has literally been years since one is sold. How do we figure this out? How do I calibrate this?
Yeah.
It ended up going for $660. In my head, prior to that, I had thought I would try sniping it for $400, and I thought that was absurd. I'm like, this is ridiculous, but it ended up going for $6. It ended up going 50% more than that. And I used the comparison on my live stream. So right here, just where my finger is, there is a patch card, and I've got it on my Instagram. I gave a whole story about it. That was a card I was chasing as well. That was from Be a Player, and they had the little patch cards. They called it Pride of the Nation, or no, it was the name escapes me right now. I apologize. But anyway, the point is, it is a patch card from Team USA jersey. So it's a little stars and bars and stripes. It's a great looking patch. The print one was 12 on those. So that's a very tough card to come by. I was chasing that. I was underbidder on that 4 times in 4 different copies. So I've been chasing that thing, and I paid less for that, and I am the record price. No one has ever paid more for that card than I have. That was $600. That was less than this 90s parallel. And I'm like, this is a tougher card. and it's got some other provenance to go along with it. It's a great card, but I'm like, it's a colored parallel of an SPX, and I've got all the other versions. So I'm like,
Yep.
I understand, but at the same time, it's like, guys, I'm not going to pay more than I did for something that I also chased for years.
Yeah.
And these are decisions that collectors have to make.
Yep.
And the problem that I get to when you're talking into thousands, now we're talking about something else, because now we're not talking about this. This $500 and $600 is a lot of money. That's why wanted to make clear that's a lot of money. I made the decision I was willing to pay it for this. I was not willing to pay it for that. I made a judgment call. But when you're talking thousands of dollars, or let's say $5,000 to $10,000,
Hmm.
even if I take away, all right, you got no bills, don't worry about the family responsibilities, you're cool. This is funny money. You can do whatever you want. Here's the problem: do you have any idea how much stuff I can buy for $5,000 or $10,000 that I might enjoy? That has
Right.
nothing to do with cars necessarily.
Hmm.
I don't want to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a piece of cardboard, Jake. I don't care what it is.
Yeah. Well, like thinking about Penny Hardaway, I know that there isn't a hockey correlation to this, but the 97 PMGs, right? Growing up collecting in the 90s, Fleer Metal was not a popular product. I did not like Fleer Metal when I was growing up. Give me the Fleer Showcase, give me UD3. There's a lot of other stuff I really enjoyed. PMGs were not a big deal to me as a collector, and they still really aren't. I get why some people love them, but like for Penny, a PMG red is gonna be high 4, maybe low 5 figures.
Mhm.
And that's one of those cards that, like, when I put out my top 10 wish list, that's not like, do I want that card? Sure, absolutely. But there are so many other cards that I would prefer. And like, if I actually had, $20,000 sitting around and I'm like, I could go and get that, or I could go and take a, dream Disney World vacation with my family. I'm going to Disney World with my family,
That's right.
it gets to that point where it's like, my card budget is my card budget, and I may never get, certain Penny cards because they're just not going to be within that budget. Who knows? Never say never, right? But the way that the prices are right now, there's a lot of those 90s grails that, just aren't really on my radar for Penny. I'm aware of them. I watch them when they go up for auction, but I'm not bidding on them.
Yeah. Well, that was the reason though why I asked about the broken. And I'm not saying this necessarily in a like, oh, this is the worst thing. No, it happens. Sometimes stuff cost inflation on certain things, but it's a hobby though. It's like a fun thing. That's why I said when we're getting to $5,000 or $10,000, as a collector who has seen this over time, I understand why some of this stuff is gone, and I understand why some of it is going to stay in that price point. But I'm back to what I said earlier. It's even if I remove the bill element of it, even if I say no, but then I'm like, to your point, you could have an amazing vacation for that. You could have a couple of really nice vacations for that kind of thing, and
Yep.
enjoy and have a good time, stay in a nice hotel. Like it'd be an experience, and that experience will carry you probably a little bit more than the piece of cardboard might.
Mm-hmm.
Like to each their own. I'll use an example that I think you can relate to because I did watch your top 10 penny thing. So you've seen these kind of things with these
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
deals. Yeah, so that's for my guy right there. Here's the thing. I bought this probably 15 years ago. And this was sitting on a dealer's table for the princely sum of 60 Canadian dollars.
Mm.
And I just bought it. Snap bought it right off the desk, no problem. But these were not a big deal when these came out. And I
Sure.
remember them very well, but they were impossible to pull.
Right.
I also know that in hockey, we've got a thing where a lot of folks hoard. And we've got a big set collecting community, which really affects the quantity available. Because I know people that are sitting on a stack of 20 or 30, not necessarily him, but
Mm-hmm.
20 or 30 of some of the bigger players, and they got a whole stack of them.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they show an image at some point, I like to capture them because it's a good reminder of some people are sitting on a whole stack.
Sure.
The last one of these that sold on eBay was in June, and that one was purchased for, because I actually have it here, that was purchased for $550 fixed price. The one before that was 620 US auction in August 22.
Mm.
And there was one more before that in 21. So in the last 2 years, it's gone for auction and sold twice and fixed price once. And the last two are in the $600 range.
Mm.
Medano's not the best guy in this list. But he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, great player, obviously my favorite, championship winner, and no issues there. But when guys that are really, really good, Hall of Fame resumes and everything are going for $500-$600, and hockey is a smaller market than basketball. We can
Yep.
do the math quickly. We can see how, like, wait a minute, this thing is escalated. It's got a
Right.
little out of hand. I wouldn't buy this for $600, Jake, today.
Sure.
But I got it because I've had it for 15 years. So
Right.
like some of my fellow Medano collectors, and I know several of them, Some of them are chasing after this. It's like, well, I wish them the best of luck. I've got one already.
Mhm. Right. And it feels so good to be in, you know, in that position where it's just like, one of the things that thrills me in life in general, but this definitely translates into collecting, is getting something in my PC for a bargain price. Like I'm a bargain hunter. I enjoy trying to find stuff in dollar bins and all that type of stuff, because if I can, if I can get into a card that is, let's say the PMG red penny, right?
Mhm.
If I can get into a card like that, like I said, is low four figures, high four figures, low five figures, but I can get it for a fraction of that price because I bought a collection,
Mhm.
and it happened to be in there, right? I'm not going to be sitting there saying like, oh, geez, I just made, X% ROI, because I'm not selling that card, right?
Mhm.
It would be thrilling for me to know, hey, I have $100 into this $10,000 card. Like, that's just kind of monopoly money for me, right? Because I'm not selling it. It's part of my collection. And I know that I wouldn't have gotten it in my collection by other means. So like that is fun to have that part of a story for me. And I know that's not the case for everybody. But that's also part of how I kind of like keep my budget reasonable, right? Like I can sit there and tell myself like, well, the last one sold for X, and if I can get it for, so much under X, then, that's fun. That's exhilarating. But it's also kind of like a treasure hunt, right? Like if I'm going through a dollar bin, one of the cards that was on my top 10 list is the 99 2000 Topps MVP promotion. The last time that card of Penny sold, there's only 100 copies that were printed. They're not serial numbered, they're short printed. Was 2017, and I remember that auction coming up. I didn't realize that there were only 100 copies because I didn't. It's in some fine print on the back of the card, and Kyle from Wax Museum actually educated me on those. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh shoot! So that one sold in 2017 for $31. I think I bid like $20-ish on it, and of course I'm kicking myself now in hindsight. I would have bid a lot more. But those are cards that I know people have found in the dollar bin because people just don't know what they are. And if I found that card of my player in the dollar bin, I would be through the roof. Or if I found that card of a player that I have a friend that collects, right? It could be Doug Christie, But if I know somebody that collects Doug Christie and I find it on a dollar bin, it would make me very happy to send that care package to that person,
Right.
And that's just part of the fun for me anyway as a collector.
No, I think it's fair. Now, part of the reason that I wanted to kind of have that conversation is because one of my concerns has been, and this is something that I pay attention because I try to watch as much. There was so much content for a while that it was impossible to keep track of it all. It just wasn't possible. But I tried to watch as much as anybody else to keep informed, just to understand different vantage points and things. I felt like a lot of the escalating prices, and even to today, the prices being higher than they were, leads to a lot of folks that they kind of want to do the angle of, as a player collector, I love being able to do something, but I would never do a collection like the Medana one again, where I've got 2,500 unique, where it's just expansive. If I was going to start a player today, I would pick a niche. I would pick a a sliver. I did that with the Havres. Big. So there's certain things that I want. There's a certain list of items that fit in certain categories I'm looking for. I love the autographs. That's fun for me. I don't need them all, but I love adding as many as I can reasonably can. That's fun for me to do. But I feel for a lot of these folks now, they've almost been motivated because of the Pelican cases and everything. By the way, I bought a Pelican case ironically because I want to piss off some of my friends. And I'm going to put like 1991 Fleer in it just to make them mad.
Nice.
It's going to be fantastic. But like, I don't care. It's a case. Like, I actually think the cases are a good idea if you've got some nice cards in it. It's not a terrible idea. Like, let the kids have their case. Whatever. Who cares? But it forces this idea of, the consolidation, the working your way up the chart. I'm like, I don't want to work my way up the chart. Like I'm cool. There's some collections I'm being narrow focused, yes, because I don't have an unlimited budget and can't do the expanse. The Medano I started in '95, so I've been at it so long now. It's like, yeah, okay, it makes sense that I got thousands of the cards. I've been chipping away at it for almost 30 years, so I get why I got there. I wouldn't do that today. If I was starting Medano again from scratch, I wouldn't even necessarily chase all of this because it would cost me too damn much. I said show with that one. No, I'd pick a couple of select pieces and we just do that. But a lot of them are like, oh, we gotta level up. I'm like, when did leveling up become like this necessity? It's like, why don't you just find some cards you like?
Right.
That's cool. Do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question because it definitely is more common to see people talking about that now, and I don't know when
Yeah.
exactly that changed. It definitely was a very recent thing, because like you were saying about Medano, like for Penny this year, I cracked the 3,000 unique cards point.
Nice. Nice.
But like you were saying, like I've been collecting Penny cards since '95,
Mhm.
and a lot of those cards are base cards that I enjoy having in my collection. Some of those cards are I'm thinking of the 95, 96 Upper Deck base card of Penny that I've had since probably 1996 or 7, and it's not in good shape, right? I had it in my case that I carried my cards in that didn't have a penny sleeve or anything on it, right? And I have a better condition copy, both of them raw, but like I enjoy having that one that I had when I was younger and didn't take as good a care of some of my cards. And I if I took the approach that a lot of people have in collecting now, I would get rid of that card. I would get rid of the electric court version, and I would only have the electric court gold version, right?
Mhm.
But for me, I like to be able to see the base, the electric court, and the electric court gold version all together, right? The rainbow, as
Mhm.
we call it in modern day collecting.
Right.
I enjoy that more than just having 10 penny cards, right? I could take all of my 3,000 penny cards, sell all of them, get a war chest, and go and get, I don't know how many, but a couple of
Mhm.
the top penny cards. I wouldn't enjoy that collection as much as I
Mhm.
enjoy being able to say I've got 3,000. Not that I go through all of them all the time, but like about once a year, I will go through the collection and cull through duplicates, right? Because I have a lot of duplicates,
So you
and
don't do the Scrooge McDuck. You don't dive into a sea of them and do like do
there
a little
might
swimming.
be some day that I need to.
I'm just throwing it out there. I'm posing questions, Jake. I'm
you
merely
know
asking
and
questions.
and, uh, and now I've got a picture in my mind of something I can do at some point, and imagine the content that I can make
Mm-hmm.
around that.
Mm-hmm.
The possibilities are endless.
I like it. I like it. I'm just saying. No, but that's the reason why I wanted to kind of pose that one. It's like, look, at the end of the day, philosophically, I'm not going to tell anybody how to collect. Do whatever you want. Whatever. Maybe the consolidation, the leveling up thing, maybe that challenge in and of itself is what excites you. And if
Hmm.
that's the case, then I get that. And like I said, for some of the other player collections I have, the more streamlined approach makes more sense. I would never do the expansive one again. Even as a full-time player collector who enjoys that genre particularly, I just can't. I
Hmm.
don't have that kind of energy. Plus, I like collecting other stuff, so it's like I'd almost rather like, look, I'll go to a certain point. I'll still chase after some of these. I found a Medano and Comc that was a playing days piece, and I wanted for the whopping sum of $3, but it was
Mm.
a playing days one that fit like a couple that I needed again for a mini rainbow, and it was $3. I was like, yes, all right, that's what I needed it for. I needed it for that
Yep.
Z folio that I have. So perfect. Hey, fantastic. It doesn't have to be like crazy, and I will win some that's a couple of $100, and that's good too.
Hmm.
So it can be a little bit of both. But and I feel bad though because it's almost like they feel that I think some of them like doing it, but I think some of them like almost feel like they have to.
Mm.
That's the way, and I'm like,
Yep.
it's not necessarily the way. You can do it a different way if you want
Yeah.
to. You're the player collector. You make the rules. You decide how you want to do it. Nobody should be telling you what the rules are. Figure it out yourself and go from there.
Absolutely. And like you were saying, like one of those, I have very few modern PCs, but one of them I know we're talking about beforehand is my
Mm-hmm.
Mason Crosby PC.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been very specific in honing in on very specific cards of his that I want. Um, Now, Mason Crosby doesn't have as many cards to choose from as, say, Aaron Rodgers,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it it's it's better for me because it doesn't distract as much from my core PCs, right? I can enjoy that PC. First off, his cards are very inexpensive in comparison to some of the other cards, right? So I can sit there and say like, hey, yeah, he's only in 1 year of Prism, right?
Uh-huh.
2019 is the only year he's in. So I can sit there and say like, I want all the key Prism parallels of Mason Crosby and the ones that are jersey color match and the ones that are Christmas color match, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
the Packers green and gold with some red lends itself very nicely to Christmas, and that's fun for me. So I can really hone in on those specific ones. And like, I had somebody reach out to me with what was it? It was a purple colored parallel, and they're like, "Oh, I know you collect Mason Crosby. Like, I want to send this to you." And it was serial numbered. I can't remember all the specifics, and I really appreciate it. And it's in my Mason Crosby PC,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't have necessarily gone out and gotten that card unless
Mm-hmm.
somebody sent me a care package with it. And outside of the Prism stuff, like there's a few like rookie cards that I kind of have on my list of his that I keep missing auctions on, the Contenders auto and stuff like that. And there's a few others, that'll pop up. And I'm like, oh, okay, that kind of hits enough boxes for me to grab it. But it's, at the end of the day, I'm probably going to have like, 2 or 3 dozen Mason Crosby cards. And that'll be satisfactory for me for that PC.
No, it makes sense. Makes sense. Now, just a high level. Obviously, you got the Penny, you got the Mason Crosby. You've got. I've seen like part of the reason I enjoyed bringing it up is that I have seen. You do have some Favres, so I do appreciate that as well. I appreciate that. My favorite of the for reasons that we discussed beforehand. One of my favorite of the Packer quarterbacks in the era that I was watching. I like Aaron Rodgers, but I more appreciate the jokes and the memes involving the darkness. That's the part of Aaron Rodgers I appreciate more. I appreciate Super Bowl 45, and I appreciate the memes involving the darkness. And I appreciate that he's following the far path of random teams that he's joining. Not so random.
Really cool. We'll see. We'll see how closely he follows that.
Look, all I'm saying is, Vikings quarterback Aaron Rodgers next year is like, look for it. It's coming.
Oh boy.
I just want to follow the exact path, Jake. I just want it. It's like it's. Mwah.
I and to be completely transparent, as a Packers fan, it was really hard for me to do this, but I really did enjoy seeing Favre have success with the Vikings towards the tail end of his career, because it was kind of he was getting a lot of those, he's washed up, he needs to hang him up, and it was a nice kind of like chance for him to stick it to people. But also there were some, again, it's really hard for me to say this, but there were some players on those Vikings teams that I really enjoyed their talent profile going into the draft, and seeing them go to a rival team was not necessarily what I would prefer, but I enjoyed seeing them have success at the hand of one of the best, if not the best of an era. So it was definitely fun watching them, and the Packers didn't really have a shot that year. So it gave me a rooting interest in the team that did have a shot. They didn't ultimately get there, but they're close.
It's since you like Christmas so much, I always thought that Brett Favre was a very generous person, because in NFC Championship games he likes coughing up a big interception. He is like Santa Claus at the NFC Championship game. Sometimes he's done it for multiple teams. I'm just throwing it out there. He likes giving gifts. So,
that is a perfect correlation. And if I remember correctly, when he retired, he had the record for the most touchdowns and the most interceptions. So
the second of which he still has, and I think may never be broken, because no one else will throw that many interceptions and keep their job.
Right, exactly.
You better be good enough at the first part of it in order to keep your job to allow you to have a chance at the second part.
Right.
So I think that's fair. But I enjoy, like I said, if nothing else, I will say, everything else notwithstanding, the Favre era was very entertaining. I was consistently entertained, and it was exciting. If nothing else, it was exciting.
Yep. Well, and the way that I became a Favre fan and a Packers fan was really kind of to stick it to people that were bandwagon Patriots fans around me, where I grew up growing up in New England. I've always been one of those that I get really annoyed when people are like, oh yeah, I've always, insert thing that I do here that I've never actually done before this, last month. And that's what I was getting a lot of with friends is, I've always been a Patriots fan. It's like, no, you weren't. You were wearing an Emmitt Smith jersey all year until this last month. I started rooting for the Packers to kind of, rub it in their face.
That's kind of a theme with you, though. Like I said, we joke. I joked with Jake beforehand that if you notice, just so everyone, a quick behind the curtains here. If you notice, I haven't structured this conversation the way a lot of podcast interviews and discussions are. I didn't go into tell me your backstory. It fits seamlessly into the conversation we were. So thank you, Jake, for that was smoothly done, expertly done. But I laughed because I said I'd heard enough of Jake's stuff that he had it down to a science in terms of explaining it. But in this case, thematically, it fit right into it. Otherwise, like, hey, Jake, tell us why you collect the cards. Why do you collect this one? Why do you collect that one? It's like, well, we could have done that, or we could just...
Right.
The same way that I gave you thorough, in-depth national coverage right off the top. I know that's what y'all wanted, and you got it. Deep, in-depth. By the way, you can check Jake's channel. He's done the conversations, the group conversation. If you want the tips for the national, he's literally done that multiple times on the channel. You can go watch it. It's right there.
Long form, very long form though.
Well, if they want the in-depth thing, it's literally in-depth. It's
It's
about
true.
as in-depth as it's going to get. I like the long form content. It works for certain stuff, especially if there's some nuance. I
Yes.
like it a little bit more for that. So definitely credit to you. Actually, let me kind of segue this since we talked about the content. Let me segue it into the content. Now, as the originator of the PWCC auction watch along, I hear some people have tried to make some hay out of this. I don't know why, because like I thought it was perfected in 2019. I saw there were some watch parties back then on this. Jake, I think you should have stuck to it a little longer. I hear PWCC pays people to do it now.
Yeah, it's funny because I've had some conversations with people about that, and it's funny because a lot of people don't know that the first PWCC watch parties were on my channel, and so a little bit. I don't think I've ever told this story, but a little bit of behind the scenes. I didn't want to do that. I gave that idea to Josh Cardboard Chronicles, and I was like, hey, I think this would be fun. I think a lot of people would enjoy this. And it was really revolving around the PMG Green Jordan sale, and it was a '90s card, and that's what we collected. And I was like, let's
Just as
do
you're
this.
just as you're talking, I'll kind of share it on the
Yep.
screen here. I'll let it play. It's playing without audio, so you're good. Go ahead.
And he was like, yeah, I think that sounds great, and you should run it. So there's
Yeah.
a little bit of back and forth between the two of us because I didn't really want to host something like that. And then it was fun, and we did it a few more times, and it became something that was a little bit too laborious for me to do every time that they had those auctions, which was once a month. And it was also around the same time. I'm trying to remember, there was some scandal that came up with PWCC around that time, and I was like, I don't really want my wagon to be hitched to a company that I don't want my reputation tied to theirs.
Sure.
Not that I had any sort of personal issues, but it was just, kind of one of those, I was really just starting to dip my toe in certain different areas of content outside of just opening 90s packs. And I didn't want that to be my legacy. So I made that kind of decision with talking through it with some other people and kind of came to that conclusion that I was like, oh, I'm going to step away from this. And then other people picked up the ball and ran with it. And I said, hey, great, good for you. And then some people were like, well, some people are getting paid a considerable amount to do these type of things, and you started them. I was like, well, what's a considerable amount, and what do I have to do? And then I was hearing a lot of conflicting news as far as how much they were willing to pay, and I was like, yeah, it's not really worth my time. And I also, again, I don't want that time suck on every single month having to dedicate 2 or 3 hours one evening every month. That's not the way my life is set up right now. So
But you could have also gone the direction of there's PWCC, there's there's some people on eBay consigners that do that. You could do like 40 or 50 of them. Like it's just fill up your whole calendar full of watch
yes.
parties. That's a thing. I don't know who would do such a thing, but in theory you could do such a thing. That's a thing that could be done.
I could sit on the couch with my wife and do those together, so I could still have some time with her, and she would love talking through all these, basketball cards getting sold.
Amazing. Frankly, I think that's a fantastic idea whose time has come. But fair enough. I just wanted to. I also slowed it down because at first I realized that I had it going on 2x speed because usually I listen to a lot of stuff in through 2x speed, and I was like, and probably some people are going to think that Josh was actually talking quickly because that doesn't happen. Like I said,
So
I've interviewed the man, not quite that.
One
fast.
of the there are some really fun nuggets because again, this was very early in the basketball card content space, and not like there wasn't card content before I came along, right? Because there was plenty of people doing lots of stuff, but there weren't a lot of people talking about basketball cards. So there are a lot of fun nuggets in some of those videos that are like really early examples of certain people being like on live format. And I remember that I don't remember what the card was. There was a Penny Hardaway card that Josh was bidding on, and he lost. And you get a very visceral, real-time reaction of Josh losing an auction. That was, it was entertaining. I thought it was fun and funny and interesting seeing that. And like, we also have some interactions of people winning auctions. We also have some people that had cards that they were consigning through PWCC that were not selling as well as they were hoping, or the bids weren't, so like there's a lot of reactions to stuff that are happening live on some of those that I think are kind of interesting. I might have to go back and rewatch them now.
So the reason I brought it up was twofold. One to poke fun at people who remain nameless. If you know, you know. But at the same time, Um, I've never really gotten the idea behind the watch along thing as a content piece. If I separate the people involved and I say the content piece, what you're talking about with the PWCC has been involved in a number of different scandals over time.
Mm,
They have their own issues. I've used the platform and it's fine for what it is. It gave me some good opportunities to pick up some great cards at relatively inexpensive prices. So for me as a collector, I have to kind of balance out the, oh well, they've got some shady background in the history versus, well, that's the platform that the thing is on, and the
hmm
price makes a lot of sense for what I'm trying to. So I want the card, so I still have some interest in it. And in the same vein, like I can joke about the whole thing about the PWCC and their history, but at the same time, so well, their money spends like everybody else's. If you
hmm
make it worth my while. However, to your point, my question here, and kind of I'll take it from here, other than the mockery piece, I'll move on to it's the format though, because in the format when you guys were doing it, number one, I appreciated it was Google Hangouts. That's actually how I did some of my early
Yep.
lives. I had some viral stuff that went on the channel, and if you go back in the archives, that's Google Hangout stuff.
hmm
Prior to StreamYard, that was a good, easy way of doing the online video call, and put it on YouTube, and you could
Yep.
do overlays, you could do some of that stuff. You could do a little bit of mediocre screen share. The screen share wasn't fully developed.
Okay.
There was a little bit of that, but you could. I played around with it a little bit. You could actually do a little bit of that as well. So it was cool, but it was also free. So it's kind of
hmm
cool that it was available and it automatically connected to your YouTube channel, and it made it very seamless back then
Right.
to set up the video call. I do like what StreamYard though. I think they've taken it to the next. This is like certainly levels above what we had
hmm
in the Google Hangout period. But what I liked about that version of it, in reality, you're not seeing the auctions. You're just getting the watch party. You're
Yep.
just because on the one hand, look, the reason I tease about the whole thing about the sponsored version is that, well, the sponsored version, the emphasis has to be on the auctions because at the end of the day, the sponsor isn't paying you to just randomly comment on just the auctions you like. You can do that, but there's got to be value. If
hmm
a sponsor is going to pay for this, then and this is why I kind of tease some folks. I was joking with them. I was like, I almost kind of want to do a counter programming auction box party where I literally ignore 3/4 of them and just focus on like 5 lots, and that's all I'm
Right.
looking at. Just the 5 lots I care about. The rest of it I don't care. But if you're running the kind of watch party they have now, they've broken up into genres, which is smart. But
hmm
at the same time, it forces you to have to go deeper. You got to go
Yep.
deeper into the list of auctions because otherwise, where's the value in being like, well, so okay, so if I want Medano or Favre or one of these things, like that's all I'm gonna be searching for. Maybe some Juan
Right.
Soto for baseball, but like very picky and choosy. Like maybe that's 10 total cards in the entire auction that I'm looking
Right.
at out of thousands of lots. It's like that's not going to make for a very unless the watch along is a more collector oriented watch along,
hmm
which these ones were in the terms of the cadence. Everybody opining on it. Wait, how much did that one sell for? Wait, how much did the last one sell for? Oh,
Yep.
that doesn't make any sense. And that kind of back and forth bantering commentary is more enjoyable for me as a viewer.
hmm
I'm still trying to figure out where the entertainment value is in the other version, and
hmm
I'm not quite feeling it. That's a
Yeah.
personal opinion piece.
Yeah. No, and I agree because like I don't watch. I tried to support some people with those watch parties. 'Cause, again, like I started, so I was like, great, somebody's picking up
Sure.
that ball. But I found very quickly the same thing. It was not enjoyable for me to watch. Not any digs at anyone. It just didn't really. It didn't scratch really an itch. And the the idea around us doing those watch parties is like these were conversations that were already taking place on like Blowout and stuff like that,
Correct.
where
Yeah.
people were already having these type of I'm watching these auctions on my own screen, whatever screen I'm watching, and I'm commenting or I'm tweeting or whatever the platform was. We were just doing those same conversations on a video call. So it was very organic for a lot of people that like, oh hey, I can engage with these people that are engaging the same way that I am on a different platform.
Mm.
The other ones don't have that same kind of vibe. At least that's my take on it. So it was one of those things. Like we were talking about, with me not doing those, I had pitched the idea at one point to one of the people there of, well, if you guys want me to do something, maybe I can do kind of like a recap and share some of the stuff that I was interested in. Right. But
Mm.
apparently a lot of people don't really care about the Michael Finley cards that I'm looking at, so
It's tragic. That's
yeah.
really truly unfortunate. Yeah. But I think and that segues into, so like I said, I got in my digs. That was my fun part. I'll do the digs. Don't worry about it. I'll handle it. But it is relevant to, like I said, genres of content. Because in your channel, you've tried a lot of different formats. We've got the pack openings, you've got, showing off some showcase stuff. I find, and this is the general topic, and then we can go in whatever direction makes sense to you. I find that it's very tricky if you're doing stuff on this platform to try to figure out the balance of what type of content. There's stuff you want to do. There's
Mm,
stuff that makes sense to do, that's easy to do, tougher to do, et cetera, et cetera. But also, there is a bit of a cap on the way certain content can do. I know that's why I kind of have some fun with some folks that I know in the space who have more subscribers and all that. They've done a very good job. They figured out their niche, their genre. Breaking news and a little bit more dramatic content will
mm,
do better.
mm-hmm.
I said the joke, and I was mentioning one to Jake that I was having some fun with. I do videos that are just the pickup videos. Those ones are predominantly for me. It's very clear in the format that I'm not putting a ton of effort into it. I'm literally putting on an iPhone, turning it on, talking through. I'll talk through the piece a little bit just so that it's not completely devoid of any context. But it's predominantly so that I can go back after, scan through, and go, okay, what did I pick up this year? So when I do my year end, hey, these are my favorite pickups. I can make sure it's actually 2023 and not actually 2022, and I'm misremembering the times and the dates.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but not a lot of people are going to watch that, and understandably so, and that's perfectly fine. But then I can go, PSA got a new price thing, whatever, and that will get way more attention. Or, Beckett did something crazy and lit themselves on fire, proverbially. That will get a lot of attention. Or a prominent YouTube channel will basically douse themselves in kerosene for the amusement of us all, and that'll get a lot of attention. So the dramatic content just naturally brings in more eyeballs. It just does. Or commentary or opinion can actually do that as well. If there's a little bit of a hot take, involved,
Yep.
we know it sells. Like, so so that's why I say with those guys, like, guys, if the goal was just to maximize views, then the approach, the angle, is to lean into that and bombard the channel with that.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there's kind of a cap. You'll get to a certain point, I think, if the content is good and people like it, you'll build a community of folks that enjoy it consistently, but it will hit its plateau. It'll hit
Yep.
its level, and that's where it's going to sit. There's not too much more you can do unless something accidentally hits and goes viral, and maybe a few people who never saw you catch it.
Right.
Otherwise, this is the audience.
Yep.
Now, you've kind of experienced that, so it's unfortunate, but it's also understandable in a certain way. How do you reconcile around that? You understand that this content will have its audience.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is, and that's it. Like, outside of something randomly happening, that's about where the level it sits at now.
Yeah. So I had to kind of reconcile that with myself. I don't know, a while back, and kind of think through, like, okay, what is my goal here, right? And luckily I've got a lot of people that I talk to that I trust that will, kind of keep me with a level head. And one of the things that everybody kept saying to me is, like, what is the reason that you started making the content, right?
Mhm.
And the reason that I started making the content hasn't changed, and the goal has never been a large following, sitting on, insert talk show, getting large sums of money. Like, those were never my goals. It was just to
But it
share
would be
my,
really sweet. All I'm saying, Jake, is it would be really sweet, though,
it
and
would
I
be
will not
really,
reject it.
I would love to sit on a couch and talk through stuff with the View, about cards. I'm sure that, Whoopi Goldberg would really enjoy me talking about penny hardware.
I think it'd be amazing. I think it'd be amazing.
But no, like, so those were never my goals and my intentions. It was really just to share my knowledge, share my collecting journey, share my experiences, and that I can do that if one person watches, and that's just, my daughter, and I can do that if 1 million people watch. So I had to kind of reconcile, like, I'm still doing it for the same reason, and if I stop doing it for my own enjoyment, it's going to come through, and people are going to be like, well, there's no energy there. So focusing on doing things that I enjoy, and recognizing that can change over time, right? Like, doing the 90s pack openings were really fun when I could get those packs for a significantly lower price point than I can right now, right? So some of the fun that was there isn't there because of how much I would have to pay for some of those packs. So that's fine. There's different ways that I can share my experiences. And right now I've got a lot more. In the last month, I've had a lot more grading reveal videos than I did, the prior year. And that's going to phase out very quickly. And there's going to be other things that'll fill in, so It's just one of those things that like I just had to sit there and think it through and talk it through with some people and just be like, no, I'm still having fun doing this, and I'm still doing it for the same reasons. And I also know that if I was to get into some of that kind of like reactionary type of space, it would kind of change my feelings on kind of the collecting hobby, right? Like digging into a lot of those news pieces, it wouldn't be a healthy space for me, to just have that be my daily grind or whatever. And not that I'm saying that's unhealthy for other people. I just know that for me and the way that I'm set up, that's not, something that would be good. And, sometimes it's fun for me to watch other people sling mud, um, so I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, that's, lowbrow and I don't watch. Like, no, I do. Some of it is fun and funny, and some of it I watch, because I'm like, oh, this guy is a clown. So there's I'm just like everybody else and watching some of that stuff and my opinions on it. But I like to share my opinions privately, if I'm going to share them at all. So
No, that's fair. I think there is a value to having the popcorn crowd, the folks that will grab the popcorn versus the folks that feel the need to enter the fray.
mm-hmm.
Uh, it's one of those things where like I've got kind of a catch-all, and this is why I say that. And this will kind of lead into my next question here a little bit as well, is that I think a lot of us who have been doing it for a little bit have to figure out the formats that fit what we're actually trying to accomplish. So I think that is a thing. I found live streams is one format that really works well for me. Some people can watch it live. Some people like watching it on replay. They like having it in the background while they're doing other stuff, but they'll still catch little things here and there. So it still works. That's the long form. I also like having conversations like this because stuff like that really works very well. Again, it's long form, but I think it's enjoyable. And it's one of those situations where this one can also lead itself to audio. So I can actually push it to two different places and it works for the most part. But one other thing, and this will kind of play into the question, is that as time goes on, you kind of evolve the channel, you kind of evolve the formats and everything. One thing that I discovered, so I'll give my example, and then I'll kind of play into yours because you've done a little bit as well, but I'm curious about your thoughts. I tried doing a lot of the edited stuff, and I actually still like doing it. To be honest, if I had an unlimited amount of time, unlimited amount of energy, I love the edited stuff
Mm-hmm.
because in my I can see in my mind a million ways to make a certain clip even more entertaining by inserting the right thing or making like actually there's a really clever way that I could transition to something, start talking in one place, be in a different place. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
have some fun with that.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's a lot more energy. It's a lot more time.
Yes.
It became a lot easier most of the time. StreamYard has been good for this because sometimes I'll do the screen share thing, but it's easier for me. I've got a boom mic here and the microphone right here. It's already plugged in basically. I can just plug it in, do the StreamYard thing, do the screen share with audio, and boom, 3/4 of my work is done. Like
Yep.
it's less work for me. Just a couple of quick cuts and we're done. I streamlined the process. This is what became, and the other way that I do it now is I'll just do the full screen share. You don't even see me, and all you're doing is hearing my voice, and I'm showing you whatever it is I'm talking about. But that is way less work for me to edit.
Yep. Yep.
So I can get the videos out there with reasonable processing. You've tried a couple of different formats. You did the office hours, you do the regular ones, you've done a couple of different. How do you find that it's evolved with how much time you have, how much energy you're willing to put in, and that piece of it?
Yeah. No. And it's funny because when you talk about the editing, like I like how my videos flow when I do a little bit of editing, but it takes a ton of time for me. It's it's something that I do it because I like the quality that I think it provides, but it takes more effort than I think some people have more talent for doing that stuff than I do. So sometimes I can't produce as much as other people because it takes me more time to edit the videos. But I do it because it's the quality that I want to put out. And I think that it plays a little bit better. But to your point, there are absolutely more things that I feel as though like I see other videos in other spaces that I'm just like, oh yeah, I could definitely do that, but the time, right? Like, so when I've done the card show vlogs, I put that in quotes because to call them vlogs is really a stretch. Like I have in my mind what I want it to look like, but then when it actually comes time to either recording the clips, editing it, whatever the case may be. I just don't have it in me, right? So it ends up being what it is. When I go to the National, one of the things that my wife says to me is she's like, "Why don't you take more pictures with people?" Right? Like I talk about all the people that I'm sitting down with and chatting with and having these. She's like, "Why don't you take more pictures just to kind of like have those memories and those mementos?" And that's just not nascent to me, right? It's something that like I always go in there and I say like, "Yeah, I want to take more pictures. I need to do more pictures." But then when I'm there and I'm sitting down, I'm talking to people, it's the same thing when I go to the shows, when I'm going through, dollar bins and showcases and trying to find those cards to add to my collection. Making content is, a secondary or probably tertiary thought. And after the fact, I'm like, I should have, taken this picture or done this other thing. So it definitely is something that, I like doing some editing. I would like to do more, but I just don't have the time and I don't have the aptitude for it. At the end of the day, if there was somebody out there that said, "Hey, I'll edit the videos for you for free and help you out with it," I would be very welcoming to that. And there actually was somebody who offered to edit some clips out of my videos and put it on my YouTube channel, and they were doing that for a while, and then they asked me to pay them, and the irony of it was they wanted more. They wanted not to throw any jabs at them, but they want to be compensated for their time. Totally get that, and they should, but I'm just not the right one, because they wanted compensation that was well above what my channel has ever generated in any time period. So I'm just like, if I'm going to pay you more than I'm even getting, and they're like, "Oh, but you could get more," and I'm like, but that's not why I'm doing this stuff. And it's, and they were comparing it to other people who are, paid by, corporate entities. And it's just like, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. So,
Now, see, if you had done the watch parties, Jake, you would have gotten that sweet editor money.
Right. Yeah. And, if those watch parties came with an editor, now we're talking. But yeah, so figuring out those formats, because I have a lot of those office hours videos. I shouldn't say a lot. I've got a handful of those office hours videos that I've recorded, and I just haven't edited them, posted them. So they'll get out there eventually, and I'll throw them on TikTok and all those other places when I've got the time. But a week and a half ago, I'm on vacation with my wife, and I could be sitting by the pool editing some of those videos, but I'd rather be enjoying a drink in the sunset. So make choices.
Fair. I think it's fair. And the other thing I was going to add, though, and that kind of a thought that it kind of plays into what you're talking about, it's also something that is a reality of YouTube. I think people don't understand how niche this genre really is. Even if you're really successful, relatively speaking, even the big, that's why I say I use the comparison. I use the, everybody loves Jeff Wilson, with, unapologetically. It's really embarrassing, the love fest that people have in this hobby for Jeff Wilson. It's crazy. But even that channel is still small potatoes in the grand scheme of YouTube. If we're talking about like big YouTube channels, it's not even a minnow in that pond. In this space, it's the 800-pound gorilla, but over there, it's like, you don't even register. We're not even having a discussion with you. But truthfully, like, when the amount that gets generated from these channels is minuscule, it's small. Even a video that takes off, it's still like, I could make more money like eating my lunch at work.
Right.
Like, it's like I'm not even doing work. Like I literally, while I'm eating my lunch, I make more money doing that. I'm eating the sandwich. So it's not like big dollars are involved in that. But the other piece of it is diminishing returns. Even if you're saying like, okay, I'd like to get my message in front of X number of people. All right, if I do an amazing fully edited video, how many people will see it? 1,000 people. I'm just making up a number. It doesn't matter. 1,000. All right, if I just turn on a microphone and do a screen share thing, how many people watch it? 850?
Right.
Okay, so like that feels like a better return on my investment, time and energy wise. Like I hit the button, I hit play, and I turn it off.
Yep.
It's very small, the difference. I think most people people are drawn to the slick edited videos, no doubt.
Sure.
And if you can really do it and present it in such a way, I'll use an example. Justin Gamble. He's a young guy who's come out in the scene, done a lot of stuff. He already had another YouTube channel, is already very popular, but he does very slickly edited stuff. His stuff is all like under 10 minutes. It's very slickly edited, but 3/4 of the videos are him doing some card deals and then ending up in a club drinking too much and eating. So it's more like a vlog. It's more like a lifestyle vlog with a card element introduced into it. So I understand. So when that gets 3, 4, 5,000 views, I get it. he's selling a very different product
Mm-hmm.
than somebody who's talking about a couple of cards here and there. Yeah, there'll be cards in it. There'll be some discussion, but like it's 30-second discussion in a 7-minute video and then 2-minute club montage. Like
Yeah.
we've got a ratio here that we're trying to maintain.
Yeah.
So I think that's a different audience.
Yeah. No. And one of the things too that I not that I pride myself on, but I enjoy, I would say, with my channel is it's much smaller than some of the big ones in the category, but the engagement is, really high. And that tells me that people enjoy it, right? I don't, I could go and buy subscribers to make myself feel better, but
There's a few folks there that are very concerned about the bot subscribers.
Yes, there are some people that are also very concerned about making sure that certain numbers are whatever they need, Mm-hmm. So, if your ego needs bot subscribers, ball out, but for me, I think seeing the engagement there, and I do look at numbers like that to see if my content resonates with people, right? So like if I'm trying a new format, right? Like I talked about those card show vlogs, the engagement on those is not great. So I shouldn't put a lot of energy into that, if that's not what people want to see and it takes a lot of energy for me to do it, because like the last one I did where I like had a video, I had video of the table and the deals and the angle wasn't great and all that kind of stuff, but that took me a lot of time to edit that and cut out a lot of the stuff and speed through some of the stuff, and it didn't seem like people were really interested in that. So you know what, I can save myself the time and the hassle of going through all that, if people aren't interested in it. And then if I go away from that and people say, hey, bring that back, then I'll listen to that. Like one example is I have this, I think they call it like a bumper reel. I have like the video play of somebody dunking a ball and then my logo comes up.
Yeah.
And I was looking through some of the analytics at one point and like that, I think it's like a 7 or 10 second piece of my video.
Yeah. Viewers drop off.
Right. So I was like, okay, people don't want to watch it. I'm going to cut it out. So I cut it out.
Yeah.
And I think the 3 videos that I cut out of people were commenting, where'd that clip go? I want that clip back.
Right.
So I threw it back in there, and people are still dropping off at that point. But if people are going to take the time to comment and say that they want it, I'll throw it in there.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. Kind of in the same vein, let me ask you this, because like I said, you did try you are still using you got the Office thing. Obviously, you got to edit it. It's the time thing that we just talked about. So let me kind of ask 2 similar but a little bit different questions that you can take in 2 different directions. One of them is there a format that you'd like to try that you haven't already tried?
That's a good question, and I don't know if I have a really good answer for that. I would, if I had somebody to help me edit or film or whatever, I would love to share more of my experience at a national, right? Because there's a lot of activity that I get into, a lot of deals and stuff like that I would love to share some of that stuff with people, that people ask me a lot of questions about that I have to pick and choose what I'm going to use my time for. So if somebody, but at the same time, like I don't want to be one of those guys that has a camera following him around Chicago, right? It's tight enough as it is, so it's like, if there was some way that, I could do it without being, that guy, so to speak. I would like to share more of that, and, figuring out a way that works in, like, as I'm thinking through it, as I'm saying it, I don't think having somebody follow me around, but like figuring out a way that I could maybe like get back to my hotel room and share some clips and stuff like that. But, I don't know how I could, but I think that would be cool if I could figure that out. That's one thing that I can think of. There's not a lot else that really jumps out to me. I could probably do more with sharing more of the day-to-day stuff, but that would be a lot of just me searching eBay on my phone. So I don't know how engaging that content is. How many times people want to see the same saved searches pop up and like, oh, look, no new cards here.
I think that's fair. Now, if you were doing if you were doing your searches on specific consigners, I bet there's some consigners who might be interested in that content. Just throwing it out there. Uh, just throwing it out there. Like,
Yep.
I've heard rumors. In theory, this might be a thing. Uh, Jake, the thing is, maybe it's the way my imagination works. I can think of two right offhand. Two that I would love. I would love if somebody wants to sponsor it. I am willing to do national coverage, like real good national coverage.
Mm.
I will go down to Rosemont in Chicago, and then I will do a vlog where I never actually set foot on the floor, and I actually just hang out in Chicago, and it's actually just a vacation to be in Chicago during the time of the national. But I never set foot or do anything card related during the entire time. But I'm
Just
close
look out the
by
hotel
enough that I could do
window.
it.
Just look out the hotel window of everybody walking across the street. Like, oh look,
Yeah, but
everybody's
you
going in
see,
right now.
you see me like in an Uber, but like the screenshot is just me waving at at the Stevens Center, like every day in every single one of the vlogs. But I never actually go there. I literally just go. I'll go to do a Cubs game, a White
Yep.
Sox game. I go hang out. Like they got their tower. I think it's like a Sears Tower or something. I go
Yep.
hit
Yep.
all like the
The
tourist spots.
bean.
Yeah, but it's all in Chicago. I
Right.
never actually like I'm in Rosemont, but I leave Rosemont to go to Chicago and do other things, and I never actually attend the national during the time of the national. We can do that one year. Another year, I'll just do it from Vegas, and literally I'll show a screenshot of me watching some people do national videos. But again, I'm never in the national. I
Right.
think this is great. We could do it on the Travel Channel. It'd be phenomenal.
You know, you could have had a great time in Atlantic City last year.
Mhm.
There's lots of sites and lots of fun things you could
That would
report.
be the one where I do the one in Vegas. That's the one where I would do the Vegas one, where I attend the national from Vegas.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one idea. And then my second idea is almost as good as the first one. It's not quite as good as the first one. The first one was really good. But the second one, I would love to do, and Whatnot could sponsor this. I've heard they'll do this thing.
Okay.
I would love to get $50,000 to go to the card show, and I just will buy garbage. I will just buy all the Todd Van Poppels they got. I want to spend $50,000 on Todd Van Poppel and Greg Jeffries. That's what I want.
No Tony Manrich.
Sure, why not? Like whatever. Like I need 50,000. Like there's only so many. Like I might end up with 303.5 million Todd Van Poppels in 50 grand. So like
Right.
there's a lot. There's a lot is what I'm trying to say. But Whatnot pays for it, and I think that would be sensational content. I literally just buy absolute trash with $50,000.
As long as you auction on their site, I think they'll be happy with you.
Is what like, Jake. I got ideas. I'm trying to say I have ideas.
You see, and that's what I lack. I lack that creativity. So you and I need to come together
Yes.
and have that
Yes.
meeting of the minds.
Yeah, like you got to admit though, that'd be great content. I don't know if it would do what they wanted to do, but I got to admit, like some of us would probably enjoy it quite a bit.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I imagine you could make quite a series out of stuff from that, and I'm sure a lot of people would follow that journey.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. That's where we got to think. We got to start thinking entertainment, people. We got to start thinking if we're going to go the entertainment angle, then let's go the entertainment angle. Like we can literally just have some fun, poke some fun at this stuff, and make a mockery of it a little bit. And it's
Speaking of poking some fun, so there was a very big controversy a few years ago. A very long tenured YouTube content creator, I remember, bought some cards and threw them in a fireplace. Created quite an uproar. So
Yes.
my family has a little cabin in the woods, and I stumbled upon a shoebox of cards that 91 Fleer and 89 hoops and stuff like that.
all the stuff I was going to buy at the national with my Whatnot $50,000.
Exactly, all the Kendall Gills, and
Amazing.
so like I was like, ooh, I could kind of like have some fun with this and throw it in the fireplace, and and I was like, you know what, I think enough people would not get that satire, so I'll stay away from that.
So. That's fair. I definitely didn't have them on my last Friday live stream. We definitely did bring that up. Again, it didn't happen. Just to be clear, it didn't happen. I've talked to the guy a number of times since, and it's a lot of fun having that conversation, talking about that. It worked out well, timing wise, for something unrelated. That's on the channel. You guys can watch it. You'll see it. It's the video that got a lot of views because people like drama. Just throwing it out there. There's a reason why it has the most views in a while on a video. It's not a mistake. It's not a coincidence. I understand. I get it. I do.
Yep.
So that was one question, and obviously we've got to hash out. So we've got some ideas now, Jake. We're going to workshop some stuff. I like some of these ideas. I'm liking them.
I'll
already.
break out the whiteboard.
I like it. Second one is actually a little bit more open-ended as well. It doesn't have to be us. It doesn't have to be my amazing ideas already. Is there a type of video or genre here that you think is underserved? Is there
Mm.
something that maybe you like, but you'd love to see more of?
I at times am searching through, YouTube content to kind of like have on in the background while I'm doing other stuff. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm starved for basketball specific card content, not modern
Okay.
stuff. Like more
Okay.
more stuff that, is stuff that I'm into. Really right now for YouTube content on specifically basketball cards, um, it's myself, Cajun Cardboard, Wax Museum, and there's others that have a lot of basketball, but they dabble in other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of times that I'm just kind of like starved for for more basketball centric content. And that's very selfish because that's just what I like.
Mm-hmm.
But there's different ways of doing it, right? Like the way the Cajun Cardboard does his is different than how I do it. He does a lot of screen sharing and going through charts and talking through specific Jordan cards, and Kyle does a great job with like, sharing his experience at
Mm-hmm.
shows, and he gets the GoPro out for dollar bin footage, which I'm like that's really cool, and um has made me think of different ways I can do stuff, and then sharing kind of like the pickups that he has and the frequency in which he can go to shows that he has. He's fortunate to live in an area where there's a lot, and he has
Mm-hmm.
time available to do that. Something to be completely honest, I'm envious of a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so outside of those channels, I wish there were more that kind of dug into that, but I also understand why people don't, and people would rather do the topic du jour of the day, and rather than sharing their own PCs. But that's what I wish there was more of. More sharing the PCs and talking about stuff that you're trying to get, or that type of stuff. Sharing more of the journey around basketball.
Sure. Now let me kind of ask a follow-up question based on that, because I think it's a good answer. But let me ask a follow-up question. Do you think that there is, because during this run up, we had a lot of basketball did these gigantic leaps, these gigantic
Mm-hmm.
gains. My thought always is, this is my opinion on it. I know prior now, I know there's some rumors out there. I know this is like an Earth is flat theory, or kind of deal. There are some people that think there wasn't a lot of content before 2016. I know for a fact there was. Just I'm willing
True.
to throw it out there. I'll throw the gauntlet down and say there was in fact, because I was here before 2016 and it existed. I'm just throwing it out. By the way, blogs and also forums and things count as content as well, in addition
True.
to. So just to be clear, that is also content, and articles and all that. That is content. All of that's content. However, I always think that when it comes to collector content, what you're talking about there, sharing PCs, sharing stories about the kingdom, even in the YouTube community, if we just stick to that specific
Mm-hmm.
pillar, that genre was going back quite a ways, like going back into 2010s and such, maybe a little bit before that. Early YouTube still, there was some blog TV stuff as well, where people were kind of sharing some of that stuff. Why is it though? And this is the question that I actually have for you. Why, in your opinion, though, does the ratio of basketball type content like that not jive similarly? Because it's like, even if I say there's less basketball collectors than say baseball is a big chunk of it.
Yep.
There's the football guys will also say they're underserved. In the same vein as what you're talking about. Is it that there's just that much less, or is it out of proportion with the actual collector population? Because
Mm.
that's what I'm curious about.
That's a good question. I don't really know. I think a lot of the people that create content, I think it skews to different demographics than the rest of the collecting right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
if you were to poll people that make content and what their interests are, and then you poll collectors in general and what their interests are, I think that you get very different answers,
Mm-hmm.
very different ratios. And I think a lot of even the collector based content on YouTube, I think it skews, if I had to guess, more towards people who are sharing across sports, right? More of the general
Mm-hmm.
collecting, regardless of sport, and not really specializing on a specific sport. But I think that there's a lot more baseball content. It feels like there's a lot more baseball content because I think a lot of the first YouTube channels that shared cards happen to be baseball card collectors, because
Sure.
baseball card collectors were the vast majority of sports card collectors for a very long time until very recent. So I think that, you know, you have people that started channels back in 2013. Those people are probably going to be baseball collectors primarily. You know, so I don't think that there's been as much time for the growth of those other specific sport assumptions, though. Those are just conjecture. I don't have any statistics to back that up.
No, for sure. Shame we're lacking the hashtag scholarly content. I think like that. Oh well. The reason why I posed the question that way is that I feel like there is room for some of these niche pockets to still be able to develop. And maybe one of the things is it needs a couple of breakout stars. I think that's really what helps a lot. And I'll give you an example. So I get kind of I laugh because oftentimes I get very when we do the lives and a lot of my videos and everything, I get pigeonholed a lot. And some people will ask me like, "Wait, so you're collecting Brett Favre and you got some Juan Soto? You go like, wait, but you're in Canada or hockey?" Is like, here's the thing: I've never collected hockey. I have a couple of hockey players that I collect. I'm a player collector whose main PC happens to be hockey. So that makes sense. And of course, I'm here, so I have an understanding. I've been in the game. So it's not, but I started cutting my teeth collecting baseball. That was because baseball was my favorite sport before I ever followed hockey. Canada be damned. I played baseball. I didn't play hockey. So I've got that understanding. I've got the hockey understanding because I've been here, and you know, I'll collect a little bit of football. But again, it's specific players. I'm more of a player collector than I am a specific sport collector. So it makes sense for me to kind of tap into these genres, a little bit of each. But I'll give you an example. The hockey thing, one of the things that I learned, and this is something we're trying to teach people a little bit, it's a small market, it's a niche market, but it's a very, you know, you'll appreciate this, a very passionate market. Like their passion is there. They don't just love the top guys. They love like their third liners. They love their defensemen. There is a collector for a lot of guys who are like, who the hell would collect that? Actually, that guy will, because he's a huge fan. He is hardcore. One of our big breakout guys, 99% of people have never heard of. There's a YouTube channel called Ziri, and all he does is box breaks. All he does is hockey box breaks. That's all he does. He's got a weird shtick and an interesting way of doing his thing. Here's a fun little exercise, trivia question. How many subscribers do you think he has? Again, I'm telling you, it's hockey, small market, and all he does is basically box breaks. That's it. So we're talking niche of niche. Mostly modern, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna guess. I feel like I'm influenced to go higher just based on the fact that you said he's a breakout star. I'm gonna say he's at 10K.
57.
Wow.
I want you to, but I need to let that sink in. Let's take a moment together. Let's just let that sink in for a second. Again, remember the sports card genre, the space is small. If I say 57,000, that puts you in the upper echelon of upper echelon of upper echelon. Have you ever heard of Ziri?
Nope.
Exactly my point. But the people that know are extremely passionate. He's got over 1,100 videos, 57,000 subscribers. His last video was 14 hours ago, and it has almost 10,000 views.
Wow.
He's not buying subscribers. I'm sorry. 13,000 views, 13,000 views, 12,000 views, 14,000, 18,000, 17,000, 20,000. It's consistent, like right around the same, like up and down, different products, different things. Almost every one of his episodes now are sponsored by a distributor or a card shop or something, because again they sell boxes, so he's a box opener, and he gets fan mail. He's got episodes where he just gets fan mail and people just send him cards because they love the content. And some of them are kids. You can tell it's like kids wrote up the thing. They're a big fan. They love watching. But again, have you ever heard of him? No.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. He found his pocket. And as far as I'm aware, he doesn't really interact with anybody else in the space. So he doesn't collaborate with anybody. And to be honest, nobody's actually seen what he looks like. He's just a disembodied voice.
Yeah.
But in YouTube, this can happen. But it's very rare. But now imagine if he had an equivalent of that in the basketball space. Right. That would probably help. That would. So like I said, even though the hockey niche is small, it is clearly very passionate. If they find something, they'll rally around it, and obviously the numbers will back that up to the point that the guy has sponsorships on every video now. Good for him. I I have no issue with that. But I've never met the guy. But he's got a quirky style. People latched onto it. He is a breakout star. To me, that's a breakout star in this genre,
Yeah.
especially.
No, definitely. And it's interesting because you're causing me to reflect a little bit. The last time I've set up as a dealer at a show 3 times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a well-seasoned dealer.
Oh yeah.
So the last time I set up, I keep trying to refine my approach. So my bargain bin, my dollar bin, the last time I actually had dividers that specified what sport each section was, and I had somebody that went through. Hockey is a small portion. The vast majority of my dollar bin is basketball, but they went through all my hockey cards and pulled out every single goalie card. Not every single one. They left a few, but the guy's like, my son collects just goalies. So I grab whatever I think he might be interested in, and here he goes. And he just goes for dollar bin stuff. And I was like, that's so cool. And I was actually, so I have a friend that I grew up collecting with. We all collected basketball. That's what we loved playing, all that kind of stuff. And he recently got back into cards in the last, I'd say, year and a half or so. And he started off with basketball. This was during the boom. He was, he was watching one of those guys that, had you paying for picks, and he was following those picks and buying those cards and getting burned on them. And so he got burned out on that. So then he started switching into football and started going down the whole, prospecting with quarterbacks and, started getting burned on some of those things. So he ended up going into hockey. And he was like, part of the reason why he went into hockey is because he likes, like I do, ripping wax. And he couldn't get basketball or football wax at retail. And he didn't have a hobby shop near him. So the only option that he had was retail or buying it online for ridiculous secondary prices. So the only stuff he could find was hockey. So he started ripping it. He started really enjoying it. He started educating himself. And, I also occasionally will rip some hockey. I love ripping like Allure. And I'll rip it and I'll take pictures and I'll send it to him. And I'm like, did I get anything? Because the fun for me is just ripping it. I don't know what I'm getting. And he'll tell me like, oh yeah, this guy's good. I'm like, okay, is he good and people collect him, or is he good and so he educates me on that. Like there are some players that I'm like, wait a second, this guy, like I pulled a Young Guns of Logan Thompson, I think is the goalie from Las Vegas. And he was like, oh yeah, people collect him. And then we started talking about like goalie collectors and like what makes a goalie collectible and all that different kind of stuff. So it's really interesting learning through him because he has dove headfirst into the space and really, I feel like he has a really good pulse of it. And I always joke around about, if I was going to start a PC of any hockey player, it would be Uncle Pat. So a lot of people, I've said that and people are like, wait a second, you have an uncle that, so Patrick Waugh shares the same last name as I do. Right. So I always call him Patrick, Uncle Pat. So I would collect his cards. But at the same time, I wouldn't know where to start other than like, okay, I'm going to go look for his rookie. I know his rookie is very collectible. But other than that, like, I don't know what 90s inserts there might be of him. So it's one of those things that at some point, I'm sure I will dive into those. I just haven't gotten there yet, but it's interesting figuring out like, okay, who's the best hockey goalie of all time? I was asking my buddy this question and he was saying, probably Dominic Hasek. I was like, does he have a big collector base? He's like, not really. I was like, that's interesting to me.
I would say though, remember Europe is an X factor. Because there are, because I'll say this, I'm not contradicting what you're saying, but I'll also throw in though that sometimes we don't have full visibility. I will say there are some very hardcore European collectors. Like there are collectors who will just collect Czech players, Czech players. So that's why I say, like in my channel in the early days, there was a running joke about the goat of goats, Ziggy Palffy. So Zygmunt Palffy. Good player, like very good player, good goal scorer for the Islanders and for the Los Angeles Kings and everything. Solid player, but he's a European player, Czech player that started late. I think he got like 300 or 400 goals. Like I said, he was very good. But there's a lot of guys that kind of wound up in that very good. Never going to go to the Hall of Fame, but had some great seasons. Like if you were in fantasy hockey, he was a great guy. There were guys like that. But there is a hardcore fanatical collector base who will go and like you'll get a card of his and they'll be like, wait, why did the Ziggy Palffy go for $200? Well, because there are still people that love Ziggy Palffy. They will. I had an atomic refractor 98-99 Bowman Best, the out of 100 atomic refractor. I bought it for like $10 because I was like, yeah, it's worth more than $10. I'm sorry,
Hmm.
it's worth more. And also, it made a good joke for the goat of goats, the joke on the channel. I
Yeah.
showed off the card. They're like, oh my god, the goat of goats. The people on the channel get the joke. They get it.
Yeah.
But I think I sold it for $50 or $60, and it was a little bit scratched up. It was a little bit beat up. But the thing is, the people that want it, it's a tough card. It's a very
Hmm.
difficult card to come
Right.
by, and the atomic refractors look beautiful from that late
Yep.
'90s period. So what happens is you end up in a Venn diagram. The reason why I say don't discount some of these weird random players because you got a Venn diagram. There are player collectors, yes, but
Mm.
there are also team collectors who can play into it. And then
Mm.
the scary part is when you combine those two with the people that want to do the set.
Mm.
Because there are people who will also try to do the set. So all of a sudden you're hitting three different things at the same time. And then you wind up with a price that otherwise in your mind makes no sense.
Hmm.
This player should not sell for that much, but the problem is it's a really hard card to come by if you're working on the set. And
Yeah.
if you happen to be a player collector for it and they only come up once in a blue moon, and all of a sudden, now we're talking.
Right. Yeah. No. And it's funny because like I see that also happen with a lot of '90s basketball stuff where when you get that culmination of those same exact factors, that's what, for example, like a Star Ruby's Penny Hardaway, right? I'm gonna be fighting. I'm not fighting with as many team collectors for that card, but
Yep.
I've got the '90s parallel enthusiasts. We've got the
Mhm.
set collectors, and then you've also got the Penny Hardaway collectors, and then
Yep.
you've got other people who just love rubies in general.
Mhm.
So it's difficult to get some of those cards, and I could definitely see a situation where if you go into, again, nationals on my mind, but if I go into the national and I have that knowledge and I'm going through
Oh,
a
is that
dollar,
coming up soon? Is that a thing?
I think it's very soon, yeah.
It's not a big deal. It's okay.
But you could talk about this with any show, really.
Yeah.
Like you could go to my booth at my local show,
Mhm.
and I'm sure find stuff in the dollar bin that like I just don't know that there is a fervent collector base for that specific card, and you can probably get something in my dollar bin and ask if I'll give you it for less, and you could probably throw it up on eBay for I don't know, $2,000, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
But I also think that it's smart for dealers to have some of those intentionally in dollar bins, right? Like if I'm going through a dollar bin and I'm finding cards that are all $1 or less,
Mhm.
that's not a great dollar bin for me to go through. But if I go through and I'm like, oh, this card's probably $1.25, right? Like there's some juice there, right? For me to go and keep digging and keep looking. That's something I know I've heard Dr. Beckett talk about. So
For
I
sure.
agree with him on that.
Let me kind of so I love the conversation, a lot of the collectings, the different categories and everything. Let me kind of I could have a longer drawn out conversation, and I actually want to leave some stuff because I want to have a part two. I want to have
Mhm.
another conversation, a follow up conversation, because there's a lot more meat on this bone because I can get into the '90s. You notice I barely touched on the '90s.
Right.
And I lived that entire decade, and I collected the entire decade. Like I said, Jake, I want to save some meat on the bone. There's some good stuff here. We can do it. But I want to touch on one thing here. We won't leave the people completely starved and deprived of some '90s discussion. Let's touch on a little bit. One of the things that I think helped the '90s with it is that there were some of these different technologies, and I think there's a collector base for some of the technology. I talked about the Star Rubies. I gave the example of it wasn't a technology, but obviously the format of the release format of the StarQuest Golds
Hmm.
made them become more popular because people realized what a legitimate rarity they were, how hard they
Right.
were to get. The rarity became the draw. Even though the cards look pretty good, but it's a gold foil. You can take it or leave it. It's up to you, but you know they're rare. Like if you know, and if you're collecting one of those guys, that's a key piece that
Yep.
you want. But you'll wind up with some of these technologies, and I'll use an example of this one. This is one of my favorite cards. So for the hockey side, so you got the little stars going in the background.
Yep.
So that's the Sixth Sense Wizards.
Okay.
But the technology has been used in other things. This is not used in one set. But obviously, this was a big draw for it, and these are the out of 100. So you use a little bit of that type of machine numbering. Of course, not aligned correctly because it never is. But there are people that'll chase after sets that do this kind of tech. So you can
Hmm.
see like the type of tech, and then obviously you'll have the atomic refractors. Now the fun part for me with the atomics is that you got the two versions a lot of times. You got
Yeah.
the Matrix Atomic, which I'm a big fan of. I love the Matrix one.
Okay.
The cracked ice one I think is very cool,
Yep.
but I like the Matrix one just a little bit more. That's my
Okay.
personal favorite. But you find that there are a lot of collectors who are chasing after some of the different sets that use some of the technology that they really like. The way the shine happens.
Yep. Yeah,
You
and
talk
I've
about how you see that.
yeah, like I think I've got it here somewhere. I have one that card reminds me of. No, it's actually sitting up there. Anyway, so it's
Yeah.
the 99 2000 Star Rubies.
Mhm.
They have like these starbursts for the basketball.
That might be the reason I used that one. I know the
Right.
Star Rubies use a similar type of tech. It wasn't an accident, but yes, please
Yeah.
continue.
And that's my personal favorite Star Rubies, right? There's a lot of people
Sure.
that like the 97 and the little amoebas and stuff like that. I really like
Mhm.
that one
Sure.
specifically. And there's also a football insert set. I think it's in 97 Upper Deck called Stargazing or something like that. Star
Mhm.
something. I remember I pulled a Terrell Davis of it on the channel. But anyway, that uses that same foil pattern.
Mhm.
That is really eye catching. I don't think they're rare. I don't know how valuable the best players are.
Mhm.
But I think that Terrell Davis is probably like $1 or $2. Um,
Mhm.
like those things. There's so many of those type of things in the '90s that are just so cool. There's people that love lenticular cards, right? That's something
Mhm.
very '90s. I don't really love lenticular cards personally, but I
Come
know a
on,
lot
you're
of
not
people.
loving the Starflix, Jake? Come on.
It's funny. When I was a kid, the Sport Flicks baseball cards. So, like you were saying, you started
Mhm.
off, primarily baseball. So,
Yep.
I always say that I started collecting in '95. I was, ripping packs and gathering cards before that, but I wasn't really collecting. And it was
Mhm.
primarily baseball. My older brother collected baseball. I love the Sport Flicks baseball cards. I remember, um, what was it? Swingmen, I think was the insert set.
Yep.
And there was a Ken Griffey that my brother had. And
Mhm.
you'd move it and it would turn into the bat in like a radial design. So
Mhm.
it really fit well with Ken Griffey and his swing. It was a beautiful card. It was blue, all this kind of stuff. So like
Mhm.
I have a soft spot for some lenticular cards, but like there's a lot of other ones in the 90s that I'm just like, yeah, that doesn't really do it for me. Like for example, 97, 98 Big Men on Court,
Okay. Yep.
D-Force. Doesn't really do it for me. I have the penny. I'm glad I have the penny. I can check that off the list. But I like 96, 97 Big Man on Court way more.
Sure.
And the 97, 98 for the so there's the ZP 96, 97 that rivals the value of the 97, 98. But 97, 98 get a lot more attention
Mhm.
than the 96, 97. And for me, it's the other way around. So there's a lot of stuff like that too that I think in the 90s you can have fun with stuff that aesthetically is more pleasing to you, but not as expensive. If you really like lenticular cards, 96 Fleer USA
Mhm.
has 2 or 3 versions of lenticular cards in their base set for each player, right? So like
Mhm.
if you, for example, if you collect Glenn Robinson, right? There's
Mhm.
going to be a few Glenn Robinson cards in 96 Fleer USA that are lenticular that you're going to really enjoy. So like
Mhm.
that's just one example, and those are probably going to be less than $1 a piece.
Mhm.
There's so many fun avenues in the 90s like that. So we were talking about the PMGs and the Rubies and the grand finales and the Star Quest Golds and like some of those that
Mhm.
get a lot of headlines and a lot of eyeballs, but there are a lot of things that are like here's one. I have cards all around me, as you can imagine. So
Mhm.
the row 0 from 97, 98 Flair Showcase, right? This is a
Yep.
Danny Fortson rookie. This is numbered to
Mhm.
500. What is that? A $10 card, maybe? I'm not really sure.
Not sure.
But some people love that. Today, if that was on a Prism card, they would call it the Mojo, I think is what they'd call it. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
if you love that pattern, that started in the 90s. So like
Yep.
there's hardly anything that you can find in cards today that didn't have its origination in the 90s. So,
What's exactly it? And that's a conversation that I've had a couple of times. Is that I know. I guess maybe this would be the way I would put this. I agree with the idea of nostalgia. I agree with the feeling, the sentiment of it, but I also don't want nostalgia to go past the healthy level to
mm,
the point that it is you start to whitewash what actually was. I can remember what it was and say, yeah, there were some really amazing sets, great cards, and some series that 97, 98 will always be my favorite year. No matter what happens in cards ever again, that was always my favorite. It was the Apex. I had already been collecting a while. I had a pretty good sense of what I wanted to collect. But that year in hockey was the last year the Pinnacle was out there. Donruss playoff was about to go to business. Pacific entered into the fray in that space in hockey. So you had a brand new entrant. You had a couple of other ones that were at the peak of their powers. They had everything going. And Pinnacle did Totally Certified that year.
Mm.
And they tried out a whole bunch of things. Some of it was really wild and off the wall, wacky, die cuts, this, that, and the other thing. Everybody did. You had everything. Like it was all smushed into this one year where you had the technology of the past and some of the stuff you would try again in the future, and
Yep.
you had it all smushed in. There wasn't to me a weak set in that run, which is to me the definition of what I consider one of the great years. But not everybody's gonna agree with that. But
Right.
you could sell me a 98, 99, 99, 2000 because guess what? I was there too, and I loved a lot of those sets too. But 97, 98 hit the perfect sweet spot with me. You had a little bit of everything. Even the game used. We hadn't run into the ground yet. So,
Yeah.
So like we had a little bit of everything for everybody. And at all price levels, high, medium, and low. So but that doesn't mean it was all perfect.
Right.
There were people complaining back then. I was at the shows. They were like, "Oh, this sucks," and blah. And I'm like, "Guess what? They were complaining about it back then too."
Yep. Yeah, I don't remember what the periodical was, but there was a sports card periodical that came out sometime in the 90s. I posted somewhere on Instagram, but it has Jordan. It was somewhere in the earlier part of the 90s, and it said like, I think the headline was like, "Are investors ruining cards or ruining them?" Right. That was what, almost 30 years ago now, probably right around that.
Yeah.
Those same conversations were happening 2 years ago and are still happening today. So it's like these things are all cyclical. But getting back to what you're talking about, like when you said Pinnacle, like all these hits of nostalgia, like Pinnacle had some great stuff that I remember, like the I think it was called like the Starburst parallels that I loved. Pacific had some great stuff, some great die cut inserts. And then let's see.
I'm a big Dufex guy.
Okay.
Big Dufex guy.
One of the other ones that I loved was Leaf Studio. So like I love a good Flair showcase card. Here's one that you'll enjoy, Favre. And I love having kind of like that player in the background, kind of zoomed in, and then like the action shot. And Leaf Studio did that at a much lower price.
Gold Label was good at that too.
Yep, Gold Label. Oh man, I love Gold Label. So Leaf Studio did the same type of stuff. The price point was much lower than Flair Showcase was. And I've got Frank Thomas and Barry Bonds are two of my Frank Thomas, Barry Bonds, and Chipper Jones were my three guys when I was growing up. So like I have, some Leaf Studio of Frank Thomas and stuff like that. And some early Fleer Flair from 94 had, has a lot of those hits. And it's funny because like you were talking about, nostalgia and, keeping it at healthy levels. Like I'm surrounded by my childhood nostalgia.
But the thing is, though, you can have it. You can have nostalgia, but what I'm getting at is, nostalgia is the basis for a lot of long-term hobbyists. It is the foundation. But I don't ever want nostalgia to convince me something that didn't happen.
Yes.
I don't ever want it to like erase my actual memory of what actually occurred when it was there. It's like, no, some of this stuff people weren't into at the time. You don't try to convince me after, oh, everybody loved it. It's like, no. If that had been true, then Pinnacle wouldn't have gone out of business. Dunrush Playoff, if everybody loved it and bought everything they had and they were making money hand over fist, they don't go out of business. That's not the way this works.
Well, and it's the same point that I was making with like the PMGs, right? Like those weren't popular in the 90s. Not that they didn't have their collectors, but like a lot of Upper Deck was the big show in town in the 90s for basketball, right? Like I remember SPX was the thing. And that wasn't really rivaled until, Fleer EX 2000 and 2001, again, for basketball. So now when you look back and you look at some of the inserts in Upper Deck, they're a fraction of the price of some of the Fleer and Skybox stuff, which is fine, but I think that dovetails perfectly into what you're saying. Like, don't let nostalgia turn something into something it wasn't, and it's funny because like I've had that conversation with my therapist, right? about my enjoyment of nostalgia and making sure that it's not at an unhealthy level, right? Which it's not, but it's good sometimes to kind of bounce that off of other people and be like, my recollection of this holiday, this family holiday, I remember it being, like this, what actually happened, right? I was 5 years old. I don't remember all this stuff, and hearing some of the stories of like, no, it wasn't the perfect holiday.
Mhm.
Remember, you woke up at 2 a.m. and you threw up all over the bed. No, I don't remember that.
Well,
So, like,
exactly. Well, that's just it. That's what I'm saying. Like, there is levels. I think that a good balanced person should be able to enjoy the nostalgia because I
yep.
think there's some really good stuff with it. That's why I say the healthy level is. I think there is a good healthy level you can have. I can go back. Like I said, you talk about the '90s era. I loved a lot of the '90s music. But I'm not going to sit here in front of you and pretend that no good music has ever been made again ever since.
Right.
That is not true. That is factually incorrect. There's new stuff that'll come out and say, actually, I like this. This is pretty good. And I'm not doing the comparison. Oh, but it wasn't as good as it was in 1998. When stop. You can enjoy the thing. You can enjoy the other thing. It's
right.
okay.
There were those same conversations when the Beatles were the new thing. It's like, oh, this isn't real music.
Yeah.
So it's like these same conversations, like as different as we become as humans and as people, the more we stay the same, right? These conversations keep coming up generation after generation about the same type of things. And it's funny. I've talked a lot about how looking at modern day basketball, right? And like vitriol that the best players in the sport get, like LeBron James, for example, right now, everybody, it's kind of like in vogue to bash on LeBron, right? Or to try to pick apart different things about him. And
it's by the way, for the record, I am on record on video as being the guy who would be like, several of you will be a lot nicer to him when he's retired and he's out of sight, out of mind. You'll like him a lot more when he's gone.
Exactly. And I was talking to some people, there's a different, I can't remember what it was. There's a different show that was on. We were talking about Jordan. And I remember in the late 90s, when Jordan was getting to the tail end of his, Bulls run, people were trying to pick apart his game. And there were a lot of people that love Jordan, but when you're the best at something, people are going to try and knock you off the pedestal. So it's like, I see those patterns repeat. And I was one of those that was a victim of doing that to Jordan, right? I've talked a lot about my brother was a Jordan guy and I was a Penny guy. And, so learning from that experience after Jordan was gone and the Bulls run was over, I was like, that was special. And I wish I had enjoyed it more. So now when these great players are playing, I try to just suck as much enjoyment out of those moments as I can while they're happening. And, okay, KD said something stupid on Twitter, but I can still enjoy him dominating this playoff performance,
Sure. I think that's fair. We got into a beautiful philosophical moment there. I like the direction that took. That was some strong stuff. Except for Tom Brady, I will slander him while he's getting inducted to Football Hall of Fame. I will do it because I enjoy it. I'm the goat of slandering. That's what I'll do.
I was also one of those for a very long time that was like, Peyton Manning is better than Tom Brady. Tom Brady might have more championships. Peyton Manning's a better player. So I definitely, it's a very recent thing that I've gotten into this whole, like, let's just enjoy greatness for greatness. But
he might do it for entertainment. I've got some big Brady guys that I enjoy. It's like, I'm going to slander him anyway. Because.
Well, it also ties into my dislike for Patriots bandwagon fans that I grew up with. So
there you go. Listen, Drew Bledsoe was better anyway. That's all I'm saying. But I agree.
He had a cannon.
He did. Look. You can appreciate it. At the end of the day, like, look, I like playing it up a little bit for entertainment value because it's a lot of fun. But he wasn't perfect either. Yep. Everybody, all of them have some flaws. It's okay. Don't take it too seriously.
Tom Brady's not Brett. We know.
Yeah, obviously. He wishes he had that cannon. Let me tell you, special guy, that Brett Favre. Anyway, what I was going to say is, I'll touch on one or two things and then we'll wind her down here. I did want to make sure I showed this because otherwise I will lose my hockey cred. The hockey guys will come after me because I mentioned that patch card that I had behind me. I don't want to reach behind me and grab it, but I've got it on the Instagram. I'll show it quick. It was Country of Origin. That was the name of the insert, but I want to make sure I correctly reference it because I was struggling with remembering the name here. So that's it right there. That's a nice image of it. And you got the nice little Team USA. That's a game use patch from his Team USA uniform. And right there, you got the stars and bars and everything. You got the whole piece. That's actually a really nice piece.
And he's on the Dallas Stars?
He's on the Dallas Stars as a player, but this card itself, this is actually from a Team USA uniform he wore. And it's actually a little shoulder patch that he had on.
That's a cool tie-in, though.
Absolutely,
I love those. I love those Stars uniforms. Anyway,
it works.
90s uniforms. It's not just basketball. a lot of other sports had really cool uniforms
Yeah,
in the 90s.
and this one was right in that intermittent period because this was right at the beginning of the 2000s. So this is 2001 2, so it's just carried over. So that's
Okay.
why I say like I love the 90s, but this is 2001 too. So I can't pretend it's like no, there's still some amazing cards being produced at the time. Like this is a really good card. This is an excellent card.
Was Brett Hull on that Stars team? I feel like I
He
remember
was.
him in that
Yep.
uniform.
He
Okay.
yep. He won the Stanley Cup with them. He's the one that the Buffalo people try to say his skate was in the crease. That's not true. Well, it was true, but it didn't matter. Dominic Hasek wasn't going to stop it anyway. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. They changed the rule anyway. It's fine. Don't even worry about it. I love when they bring us up. Yes. Have you learned nothing from Eddie Guerrero in wrestling? If you're not cheating, you're not trying. His skate was in the crease, yes, but it was triple overtime, and we all needed to go to bed. Brett Hull did us a favor. A favor. I will fight this to the end, Jake.
Here's
the end.
So I know this is I know not going to help us wind down.
Sure.
Just a thought that came to my mind as a hockey guy.
Yeah, sure.
I remember when they tried the whole like the puck on TV changing color and there being tracing behind it, and
the Fox Tracks puck. Yes.
what? How do you feel about that? I thought it was.
I
cool.
think it was a stupid idea, but I unintentionally enjoyed it because it was a stupid idea. I believe what they did is they actually attached some technology to it so that they could trace it. And I was like, guys, look, I know it's not easy to, but it's like white ice and a black puck. It's not like it's your story about your origin, about the standard def television. Yep. I understand what we're saying here. You can still see the puck, I assure you. Yep. Like it's not that. We've been following it. They followed it in black and white TVs, and they were able to follow it. It's not impossible, I promise.
Right. Well, one of the things that I had mentioned, because I remember like it being a big deal, at least in my house, and we were like, "Oh, we got to see this. This is the first time they're doing this new thing." And I don't know what I'm showing my lack of knowledge of hockey, but like when players kind of like get crowded around a puck up against the boards, and the puck's not really moving, but everybody's kind of jockeying.
Sure.
Guess what? The puck was still black. Like. So you only got that color when it was moving. So I was just like, those are the times that like as a viewer on TV, I would lose track of the puck.
Sure.
But as soon as it would get out of that area, I would pick it back up. So I was just like, so the problem that I used to have of when the puck is not moving is when I'm not able to tell where it is still a problem.
Yeah, but I think it was one of those things where it was the most damning admission they could have made. They kept saying to themselves, there have been people that have been following and watching this for decades at this point on television. And you're saying that these viewers are too stupid to follow a puck. It's not an explanation thing. The coloring around it doesn't explain anything. It's like, you can't follow it. You're too slow, so we're going to put a thing around it. So this is the thing they're trying to put in that thing. So just... Now, the cool part, I will say, for a brief era that it was, those pucks were actually very expensive. Okay. So if, as a collector, memorabilia-wise, because it was a brief run, think about it, they didn't make them for very long. There are people that collect those because they were like, yeah, we don't actually want to lose these. They're kind of expensive because we're adding tech to the puck. It's not like the regular puck manufacturing. Yep. They actually had to do some things to allow it to be able to be captured that way. And they're like, yeah, that's actually a very expensive puck.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I don't know. Listen, you'll see when eventually they decide like, this isn't, the basketball isn't going off as much as we got to put a microchip in it, and that way we can do the NBA Jam. He's on fire when he shoots it.
Hey, you see, here's that idea part of your brain kicking in again.
I'm saying, I love me some NBA Jam. I'm not a basketball guy, but I love me some NBA Jam.
Oh yeah,
NBA Jam, yes. Like I said, appreciation, much love. But like I said, my suggestion to a lot of folks is find enjoyment in a lot of these things, especially the absurd. I love, sometimes the theater of the absurd is very entertaining. Enjoy it for what it is. You will live a much happier life if you find entertainment in these little things. Don't take it too seriously. Don't worry about it. Most of it is not that important anyway. Who cares?
Amen.
Just throw it out there. But anyway, Jake, an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Long overdue. I was hoping that we'd be able to have a chance to have a meeting of the minds, and now we've got some excellent ideas and some things we need to whiteboard.
Definitely. Yeah, I need to crack out the whiteboard. You know, in my professional life, I'm a project manager, so I'm very familiar with whiteboarding stuff.
I like it. So with that said, why don't we do this at the tail end here? 90s B-Ball cards. Can you quickly give me a couple of the socials, a couple of the contact points?
Yeah, so I am. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Threads. Now I've secured my name there.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok. All of them are 90s underscore b-ball underscore cards, except for Facebook, where I
Mm-hmm.
messed up and I dropped the S, so it's just 90 b-ball cards on Facebook.
Lovely. Lovely. Fantastic. Check out the channel. There's a lot of great, passionate sports collectors content. Some of the most passionate possibly even on the internet. We got to tag that in at the
Yep,
front and then the back.
you got it.
Yeah. And I believe you will be at the National then,
I will
doing
be
your
there.
thing.
Yep, I'm getting there on Tuesday afternoon. I'll be there through Sunday. So if anybody's there, wants to meet up, shoot me a DM, find me. I'm on the move when I'm at the National, so I'm not stationary in any one place. So if you're hoping to bump into me, it's possible, but it's not probable. So set something
And
up.
I won't be there. I may get the life size standee in like an RC car and hire somebody to just move it around. That might be it. That might be all you get. So.
We can definitely put your head on a poster somewhere, though.
I would rather not do like the disembodied head. It's kind of weird. Kind of a weird thing. Like, I'm not into it, man. Like, you gotta have at least some body. Like, it's just awkward. It's odd. Just saying. Well, I hope I probably angered dozens and dozens of people over the course of this entire broadcast, so I've enjoyed it. That means it's been a good episode. So
Exactly.
I love it. Yes. Leave anything in the comments if you guys want. Like I said, I wasn't joking. I actually think there's some good ground. I'd love to go into a little bit more into depth in some of the 90s stuff because, like I said, we didn't touch it because actually, ironically, I felt like it would be better to talk about a whole bunch of these other things, that there was actually a lot of stuff to talk about. And then we still have a valid excuse for a part 2 where we can do a deep dive into some of it. So there you go. See, the content thing works, people. The content thing works. Anyway, like I said, a pleasure hanging out with Jake and chatting with him. Check him out on his various social medias and check out the YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, for some reason, you can give him a subscribe. Hey, even if we're plateauing, you can still bump him a couple points. Give it to him. Otherwise, more videos coming up on the channel. Live streams coming up on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And all the other usual YouTube stuff. Do it for the algorithm gods. Do it. And like and subscribe.
Thumbs up.